Yo, what's up, diggity dogs? Give me a high five! Last time I think we ranked total drama characters, but I'm not sure. But earlier I ranked the MCU villains, but now I'm actually gonna cut out the middleman and rank all of the MCU films in order, up to Eternals. I mean, I've talked about a lot of these films in the past, featured a few of them on random villain defeats, but here it is, my ranking of all of the MCU films and the Marvel Studios shows. Sadly, I did not see the Agent Carter, Luke Cage, or the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Netflix shows. Terribly sorry. I mean, the thing is, most people say, oh, those are actually connected to the MCU, even though, that connection amounts to just, a panda character was right with the people that was on the helicarrier for 5 seconds. That's the joke, I mean, just, I feel like there's, is there even a point to saying that they're in the MCU at that point? But here it is, ranking every MCU film, starting with Iron Man, released in 2008 with a washed-up actor at the time playing a semi-obscure superhero, and it did decently at the box office, and it had the director of Elf. I mean, this is a super important film. They are not a recasting. I'm pretty sure they had no idea where they were going with this, but as it is, it's a decent film of a rich guy having a humbling lesson and then becoming a straight-up superhero at the end. Easily one of the most basic films, no gajillion connections to every other film, no cosmic threat, just some guy making a suit in his basement and then using it to fight the current social issue, the Middle East guys. And I really love the callback, how they would be remembered all the way in Shang-Chi. Next we have The Incredible Hulk. I mean, there's a lot of debate about which is the worst MCU film, but the fact that people almost never talk about this film, ever, speaks more to the quality of the film than all the debates combined. I mean, this barely even counts as an MCU film. I mean, all it is Hulk smash, the film. Yeah, I mean, they straight up recast Hulk. General Ross is the only person reappearing from those films, and Bruce Banner's just sort of not even Hulk's love interest. Abomination only has a cameo, and there's also a Tony Stark cameo in here. But otherwise, this just and it was released under the only MCU film that we released under Universal. I mean, this one just has early installment weirdness written all over it, different design. Yeah, so Incredible Hulk, I mean, it's easily the lowest quality MCU. Low budget, low writing, just doesn't really fit in. Iron Man 2, people really don't think this is sort of a lesser sequel, and I agree, it's not really as good as the first one. And by the other MCU stand, I mean, it feels like the first time they got into the rhythm of the MCU film. Also, the two villains, I mean, there was Justin Hammer, he was entertaining at times, and Whiplash, who was a classic comic book villain they brought in. But otherwise, it just felt just like any other sequel, didn't really feel like part of a saga. Also, Don Cheadle is in this. That stops, actually, B tier for giving us Don Cheadle, as many of us would end up celebrating. And there was also a Bill O'Reilly cameo, not sure, I'll make of that what you will. But going back to The Incredible Hulk, I think that this film, just suffered from, low production values and, awkward camera work, and just didn't really feel as grandiose as the rest of the MCU. Just felt clunky, to be honest. Thor, this is the first time where they started. I mean, there was background. This is the first time the MCU started to feel like the MCU. I mean, it's not just the hero coming back this time. It's all introducing us Tom Hiddleston's Loki, the 9 Realms of Asgard. When the MCU started to become cosmic, and just a few hints of the Infinity Saga to come. There was also Heimdall, Odin, a bunch of other characters. Generic CGI villain, a good character arc for Thor, having him go from an arrogant prince to a humble warrior. And, oh yeah, this is the first time we ever actually saw an Infinity Stone on screen. But, yeah, Thor, I mean, like, it feels like the MCU is really picking up speed here. It's easily the best of the first. And now we get to it. Captain America, the First Avenger, my favorite MCU film of all time. Yes, this pre-Avengers 1 film is my favorite MCU film of all time. Why? It's just a classic story of a wimp with a heart of gold who proves himself to be a worthy warrior, charging in as a one-man army against the Nazis. I mean, they're very PG-13 Nazis, but it's a World War II story nonetheless. I'm a huge fan of these period pieces. Love how he manages to capture the 40s element to it, and really sets up Captain America. I mean, the 5-film hero that he would end up being, and really feels like a European, like a true war movie. I mean, even as the Infinity Stone, still feels grounded, like a decent enough war story. They had a Howard Stark in it. That was a good connection. But yeah, I mean, it just feels like this one, like, was telling its own story, like as a comic book film. Yeah, and it's criminally underrated in my opinion. Next is Marvel's The Avengers. Dun, 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 dun! Out of all the MCU films, I would say that this is the one that gets the most taken for granted. I mean, nowadays, seeing, like, a bunch of A-list celebrities in the MCU, like, with a bunch of interconnectedness, like, we take that for granted. But this, the first time, all 4 of these guys got together to beat up aliens using their own abilities and tying their own plot lines into a single epic battle. And by God, that shot, I mean, of them all, like, standing back to back. I mean, I have the poster in my room, in my dorm right next to me. It's pretty cool. Like, I mean, it's not really S tier, but A tier. This was, I mean, and like that box office. It's the first time the MCU would get a taste of that box office extravaganza that it keeps to hold today, apparently. Iron Man Tress, B tier. I mean, this is in my opinion the weakest of the Iron Man films. One, there was that stupid decision by Tony to like just reveal his identity. There was the Harley subplot where he just like finds some random kid. I mean, it was decently touching, but like the real thing that ruins it is the Mandarin subplot. I mean, Shang-Chi fixes it, but come on, like one of the classic Iron Man villains just turned into a stage actor. Really pretty sure we all saw the end, like just having it be some like Syndrome ripoff with some volcano power thing. Really underwhelming, but not nearly one of the worst films. Thor: The Dark World, I mean, they got some random Game of Thrones director to direct it. I think it's like better. It's better than the, you know, Incredible Hulk isn't that. I'd say it's like easily one of the. I'd say it's slightly better than The Incredible Hulk, but not by much. Like, this is easily the most hated film. It's basically the, I'd say this is the, like, a boring villain. I mean, only a few redeeming moments from Chris Hemsworth and Hiddleston. And, boring CGI villain. Like, but I feel like this is, like, the first, I mean, this is the first time they changed the logo. I think this is the first time in I'd say this is like the most fully MCU film, like taking a random comic book villain, like a bunch of connections to other characters, like it's the first time where it feels like it's less like part of a trilogy or like a continuator or a superhero story, but more like part of this dozen episodes a year saga, like just another, like it feels like it has the most MCU feel to it, like camera work, tone, music, quippiness. Yep. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, have this on DVD. And also, I love how in the post they just have Robert Redford as the guy just like walking through an explosion, even though he's like in a suit and like an office guy. But yeah, this film deserves all the praise it does. Like, it's an A-tier film, digital, like made for the digital age, modern political thriller, great action, great conspiracy story. And really brings Captain America into the modern age, makes Hydra front and center as a threat again. Yeah, Captain America, Winter Soldier, there it is. And Bucky, he was awesome in that film. Guardians of the Galaxy, A tier, just under Avengers, but I'd say like For the MCU, this is easily the most important film, like setting up like the Kree, the Infinity Stones, the Celestials, the Nova Corps. Like, it's just Thanos. Like, it sets up everything. Not only that, but it has like easily one of the most distinct styles with James Gunn. If you've seen the Suicide Squad, you should know how epic it is. And Chris Pratt steals the show. F you, he is awesome. And there's also Groot, Rocket, Gamora, Drax, each of them having their own funny funny, badass, and touching moments. Only problem is, of course, Ronan. Like, he's just like the big gray villain, like a boring gray villain that we've all had. But otherwise, like, I mean, he's really just there to like move the plot along. Decent enough moments. And he's like So yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy A tier. Avengers Age of Ultron. I think this is like easily the most jam-packed Avengers film. Like, it's better than the B tier films, but not as good as these films because they're just jamming in too much. I mean, they introduced Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Vision, Ultron, like Hydra. Like, it's just like going across the world, quipping every 5 seconds. Giant CGI showdown, and apparently he has the biggest budget of the entire MCU film, and it shows. I think this is like one of the great tentpole films in the MCU, like serving as like holding everything up. But otherwise, it's still an epic film nonetheless. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Very glad to own it on Blu-ray, which I got at a discount. And it puts its jam-packedness to good use. And still ultimately a good film. Ant-Man, S tier. This is just an S tier film. Like, in the world of like saving the world from of these CEOs, war heroes, demigods, there's just this one hacker guy who gets a shrinking suit and uses it on his comedic adventures to stop a bald guy. And like, and it's a classic heist movie, and with Peyton Reed's distinct style of directing. Really, I mean, despite its small scale, pun intended, it's easily one of the better MCU films. I mean, come on, Scott Lang, Paul Rudd, Ant-Man, that guy is awesome. Captain America: Civil War. This film is just, I mean, it's Avengers 2.5 S tier. I mean, it's one. I mean, even if they don't have Thor and Hulk, it's still an awesome film. Like, bringing the Civil War arc to its full power. Like, adapting the comics, like, making all the characters, interesting. Yep, I think this, like, I mean, there's the awesome opening, but, like, easily, like, one of the, like, and they introduced Baron Zemo, one of the better villains in the MCU. I mean, but otherwise, it's a good film. Easily earns its rank at S tier, and very glad they brought back Ant-Man. He was awesome as well. Oh, and they introduced Spider-Man. That was all one of like the true mascot of Marvel Comics. No, Spider-Man. No, Spider-Man. Doctor Strange, easily okay. This is like easily some of the best VFX in the MCU. Coolest concept, fully bringing in magic. Thor cutscene. Boring. I mean, it has a boring villain as well, but who cares? It's Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, doing the Ricky Bobby hands all the time. Cool portals. Introduced Wong, one of my favorite characters in the MCU. But yeah, ultimately a very good film, and very philosophical as well. Easily one of the most philosophical films in the MCU. Really adds a level of spirituality to it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I'd say this is just under Doctor Strange in terms of quality, but like, really like how they managed to capture the dread of Captain Ego, of Ego the Living Planet, and like and tying into Thanos, giving the Sovereign a good enough role, a good characterization for Hero, like instead of advancing the other characters, made Recruit Disney's first merchandising opportunity. And like the 80s feel, like, and it was very colorful, so that's nice. Really looking forward to Guardians Volume 3, really hoping they bring it all together. Spider-Man Homecoming, this is just so, I think it's just like I feel like we've seen so much Spider-Man that like, he's basically like Batman because of how much we've seen of him. I'd say this film is it's fine, it's A tier, but just A tier. Okay, what brings into A tier is that they have Regan Thompson, Birdman, playing the Birdman in it. And it manages to be a good high school drama in between it all. And they apparently Tony Stark getting $10 million for his 8 minutes of screen time in the film, like really. And I like also, I mean, my high school career was pretty awkward too, so a lot of good action there as well. And there was Donald Glover in it. But yeah, this is just like a solid, actually it's just B+, solid enough film. Thor Ragnarok S tier. I just love Taika Waititi. Like my only problem with the film is it felt too loaded. Like it felt like they were too like just cutting off things left and right, like killing Odin, destroying Asgard, having him break up with Natalie Portman, killing the Warriors 3, who I think are underrated. Yeah, it just felt like too much of a breakneck pace, and they spent too much time on Sakar, which is a decent enough plan, but not. It just felt too unrelated to everything else. Like Jeff Goldblum was nice, but I feel like there was like the 80s style, like with the synthesizer and the colors. I feel like the 80s throwbacks are done to death recently. But really, yeah, I think it's easily one of the most hyped up MCU films there ever was, but like really good for what it was. Black Panther S tier, right under Chadwick Boseman was an amazing actor. Great black story, one of the best villains in the MCU, Killmonger, great representation, great music, great Afrofuturism. I read Octavia Butler, so I know. But yeah, a strong message against colonialism and racism. And they also had Daniel Kaluuya playing a character from, like, the guy from Get Out. That was awesome. And now we get to it. Avengers Infinity War. S tier. I mean, it's just under Ant-Man in terms of my favorite quality, but Avengers Infinity War. Sure, it was jam-packed. Sure, it was at a breakneck pace. Oddly enough, not as bad as Thor Ragnarok. But yeah, this is like the ultimate battle for the universe against a single foe who's been built up since film 6. Just seeing everyone give one final stand. Some of the best fight scenes in the MCU. One of the greatest cliffhangers in cinematic history. This was just an epic film from start to finish. I mean, nerdy. I mean, I remember first time I ever drove to the theater with my dad to drove the car myself to watch this film. Worth every second. Thanos will go on as one of the greatest villains in cinematic history for this. And yeah. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I mean, B tier. Really underwhelming film, to be honest. Like, I mean, it's good enough in a vacuum but by MCU standards, having it happen right after Infinity War was just poor timing. I mean, and the end, like, one of the worst villains in the MCU, bland. Ghost was not as good as his Iron Man or Adventures counterpart, and the ending, like, my biggest problem is that the ending had, like, way too many things juggling at the same time, like the FBI agent, Jimmy was good at, but the FBI agent, the crime boss guy, like, chasing after the building, trying to rescue Hope Van Dyne, but otherwise, and Janet Van Dyne, but otherwise, like, I think Wasp was a decent enough superhero, and of course there's that ending. Really bad timing, Scott. Captain Marvel, like, this is like, I mean, it's a C+, but it's a C film nonetheless. Like, really feels like they were shoehorning this into the MCU. The Skrulls, like, they're shape-shifting aliens called Skrulls. One of them played by Ben Mendelsohn. How do you not make them the villains? The Kree were rehashed, like, from the past films. And they also recast Gemma Chan, like, she's a good enough actress, but you can really tell, like, they regretted using her in this film of all films. Brie Larson, she's been a controversial fellow, decent enough actress, but controversial as well. Otherwise, it's a decent enough film, girl power, I guess. Avengers End Game. The conclusion to a 22-film saga. I'm sorry, but this is just S tier, right under Black Panther. I mean, not as good as Ant-Man in my opinion, but I mean, it's basically just War Machine, Nebula, and Rocket the movie, but yeah, I mean, going back in time to all of their greatest hits, revisiting all their adventures in one final showdown for the fate of the universe, to bring back what was lost, bringing in time travel to the MCU, sadly, and one of the greatest heroic sacrifices in cinematic history, and that final battle. That is, I mean, that has to be an entire nation's GDP worth of CGI, but it was awesome. Seeing Infinity War, everyone getting a second chance to take a stand against Thanos for the fate of not just half the universe, but all of the universe. It was amazing. I mean, sure, there were a few things that they glossed over, but I mean, this film was 3 hours of awesomeness. I mean, 3 hours long, and the highest grossing film of all time. Do I think this is this is the most magnificent film in history. The amount of A-listers, the budget, the conclusion to a 21 film saga, it earns every second and every cent in the box office. Spider-Man Far From Home was decent enough. Slightly better than Far From Home, but like decent enough. I mean, of course, it would feel underwhelming given what it was next to. I saw a video saying it's actually a high school drama, usually one of the better romances of Spider-Man. I feel like Nick Fury was there just to like keep the film working, or like in the MCU. And to be honest, I didn't know anything about this, so the plot twist actually caught me off guard by who Mysterio was. Elementals were, I was genuinely intimidated by the Elementals, and Jake Gyllenhaal gave us a decent enough performance. And there's that ending, so we'll just have to see where it goes from there, or something. And then we have Black Widow. Oh wait, COVID hit. So we waited 2 years, and then we get WandaVision. Personally, this is my favorite of the Disney Plus series, sort of below Age of Ultron, but I really like how they take this character who sort of got shafted in terms of screen time, and gave her this full-on character arc. I think the beginning was, the fact that we didn't get the MCU for this long, and then we just get this cheesy, the Lighthouse stylistic sitcom, and just seeing everything slowly go to hell, and then we realize what it is. But personally, I feel like this series had a very strong start and hook, but otherwise it just sort of fell apart. In episodes 4 and 8 were literally just exposition dumps, and I feel like the amount of science they tried, hard science they tried to apply to it, really took away the magic. Having them actually have a theory board made it a lot less interesting. Agatha Hart, there's also the issue of the fact that Wanda, took a few thousand citizens and literally turned them into props into her therapy session. Vision, very glad that, I can't believe they just, gave us another Vision. Hayward was, what gets in date here is they gave us Hayward of all people, and also Agatha Harkness, who, they said, there was that song that says it was her all along, even though, what was she doing exactly? And, of course, they're giving her a spin-off because Disney saw that they liked something, and they're giving a spin-off regardless of how much sense it makes in the MCU. If you want an even better portrayal of Wanda's character, try X-Men Evolution. It's awesome, my favorite Marvel cartoon of all time. Scratch at my favorite Marvel show of all time, and you all know why, of course. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, actually this is my favorite. I feel like this is the safe option. It's easily the most, if you were to take half a dozen MCU films and boil it down, this would be the most. I feel like this is just a Captain America film and everything but name, they have, but with some decent commentary on race relations and police brutality. John Walker is easily one of the best written love-to-hate characters. He's basically just Disney trying to create their own version of Homelander, but that's decent. The jerk-ass Captain Patriotic. If you want to see that joke done right, watch the Cyanide and Happiness skit, The Star-Spangled Bastard, who would completely demolish Captain America in a battle, of course. Seriously, The Star-Spangled Bastard is even better than John Walker and Captain America combined. But otherwise, I feel like this was, and there's that lame-ass plot twist. I feel like Carly Moore, I feel like Sharon Carter was a disappointing antagonist. I mean, the power broker, I mean, you should have known there would be spoilers in this. And there was a Don Cheadle cameo, but otherwise I'd say, like, this is, like, pretty average, pretty, like, safe. I mean, they weren't taking a lot of risks with this one. So, it's a decent enough film. And now we get to Black Widow, quite possibly the most aggressively delayed movie in existence. I mean, I know that there was COVID and all, but personally I feel I was kind of disappointed. Like, I feel like we didn't learn enough about, like, Natasha as a character. We just had, like, I mean, the fact that Natasha died, that made, like, Black Widow, that made it sort of disappointing. But what I also like about Task Manager, they completely butchered his characters from the comics, one of the most badass characters, and then they just turned it into this silent-ass female with robot vision or something. But otherwise, this was a very, like, well-made, put-together, I mean, it actually was just decent, just a decent film by MCU standards. Sort of disappointing. It feels like they ripped off Bucky, they ripped off Hydra. It doesn't really like they feel like, doesn't really feel like it changed anything. I mean, it had some decent, also had Beowulf in it, I'm not really sure if I just said that. And now we get to Loki. You know, the sad part is, Loki is probably my favorite character in the entire MCU, but I really didn't like the show. I mean, for one, I really don't like time travel, but then they brought in the time police, and they just play all of the tropes completely straight, like having them be like a bureaucratic organization, like Men in Black style technology, like having like Gravity Falls, of one like time patrol, like it's just all of the tropes. Just got an email. Just doesn't really feel like it's as original as it could. Like, just feels unoriginal. And there's also Kang the Conqueror. I feel like they created this entire time travel thing just to set up Kang the Conqueror for the MCU. Like, they say he's gonna be the next big bad, but I'm not really sure about that. And I can't believe. And they literally They wanted to bring Loki and Tom Hiddleston back to the MCU, but they basically reset all of his entire character arc, removing like 5 films worth of character development, and trying to cram it all in now, and and I feel like they wasted a lot of time on Lamentus, to be honest. But otherwise, a decent, like, really, I mean, just not bad, just disappointing. Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings, okay. This is what I look for in an MCU film. I mean, for one, it starts out with this rom-com style, or like Crazy Rich Asian style, of like just showing normal people. Then they bring in this Razor Fist guy, the Ten Rings organization, a bunch of other MCU characters in a pit battle thing, and great Chinese representation. Wenwu is easily one of the best, and Shang-Chi is easily one of the best villain-hero relations in the entire MCU. My one problem is it feels like the ending introduces a bunch of different stuff. I mean, the Dweller in Darkness, the entire other dimension of Ta Lo, like, and it feels like, yeah, this feels like it went, like, suddenly, like, exploded in size or something. Didn't feel like there was enough build-up for this film. And the Ten Rings, I really like how and one small thing, really like the design on the Ten Rings, how it felt when they moved. What if this show were actually decent? I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't like this series. Like, it was just sort of disappointing. For one, the art style, like, didn't really feel distinct. Just felt like they wanted to capture, like, the actors' likenesses as much. They were sort of all over the place with which cast they brought in and which characters they replaced. And, felt like a lot of these ideas just weren't interesting. Party Thor, that's not really worthy of an entire episode. Like, Captain Carter, I mean, there was easily the best one was the Doctor Strange one, for simply how much of it diverted the thing. And, the conclusion, like, just felt like, I mean, they tried to make Ultron cool again, that was nice. But otherwise, like, I feel like what if videos like those, I mean, they make for good like, a few of these, I mean, they were decently entertaining, but, like, none of them really offered anything, like, to really challenge the ideas of the MCU. And but one small detail I like here is that they had Uatu use Kirby Crackle for his special effects, which was decent if you know what that means. And now we get, otherwise, like, it just feels like they're trying to capitalize on the fan video what if thing, like, turn it into, like, a big budget thing. Not really as interesting. And now we get to the latest one, the one I finally saw last week, Eternals, the first MCU film to get Rotten Tomatoes, and it earned it. This was just, like, there were just so many problems with this film. For one, they, like, introduced 10 main characters at once. It has very little, the dialogue was clunky at times. They chose, like, this art house director to direct this long-ass, big-budget film. This just clearly wasn't the right director. These characters, like, this just doesn't fit in with the MCU. Dane Whitman does nothing in the film. They just wanted to have Jon Snow in the film. A lot of the characters were completely imbalanced, very poor characterization, very poor establishment. I mean, there was just too much to put into one film. The Celestials, I feel like they kind of like make they're too big for the MCU, like figuratively and literally. But the director, I mean, I have tremendous respect for her. Like, I mean, they tried to make this like the first out of all the MCUs. This is the one where they promoted the diversity and inclusion the most, and look where it got them. I mean, I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying like this is easily the most diversity like centric one, and the one like that ended up getting like the worst reviews in all their history. So yeah, here it is, my rankings for all 20, I forget how many MCU films there are, that's all 26 MCU properties done.